Maru was not born into a world of comfort or fame, but into a quiet corner of Tokyo, where the rain whispered through narrow alleys and cardboard boxes piled like forgotten dreams. His fur was soft gray with white patches that looked like clouds resting on snow, and his eyes held the innocent curiosity of a creature who still believed the world was kind. On the night he opened his eyes for the first time, thunder rolled across the rooftops, and a single flickering light glowed in a nearby apartment where a woman named Mugi sat staring at an empty chair across from her kitchen table. Life had not been kind to Mugi. She had lost her husband in a car accident 2 years earlier, and her days had become a loop of silence. Wake, work, sleep, repeat. The laughter that once filled her home had been replaced by the hum of the refrigerator and the echo of footsteps she no longer heard. But that night, as she took out the trash, she noticed a faint meow coming from the alley. There, hidden behind wet cardboard, was a tiny kitten trembling from the cold. His whiskers were soaked, his eyes wide with hunger and fear. Mugi hesitated for a moment, then sighed and whispered, "Come here, little one." The kitten meowed again, a fragile sound like a violin string ready to break. She wrapped him in her scarf and carried him home. The moment he touched the warmth of her apartment, he stopped crying and curled into her lap as if he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. Mugi smiled for the first time in months. She poured a small saucer of milk, watched him drink eagerly, and said softly, "You look like a Maru." The name stuck as if destiny had been waiting for it. Days turned into weeks, and Maru grew stronger, fatter, and far more mischievous than Mugi expected. He discovered that boxes, no matter their size, were his true calling. Large shipping boxes, shoe boxes, even the small ones meant for tea bags became his playground. He would jump, roll, squeeze, and tumble, as if each box was a puzzle made just for him. Mugi began filming his antics, mostly for her own amusement. But one day, on a quiet evening, she uploaded a short clip to her small YouTube channel titled Maru in the Box. She thought nothing of it and went to bed. The next morning, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Thousands of views, then tens of thousands. Comments in languages she didn't understand poured in. "So cute. This cat is a genius. I can't stop watching." Maru had unknowingly become a star. Mugi watched in disbelief as her little companion's silly habit filled the internet with laughter. But behind every laugh was something deeper, a quiet healing. The same joy Maru brought her in her lonely apartment was now spreading to millions of strangers. Yet Mugi never cared for the fame. She only cared for the moments. The moments when Maru would leap clumsily into a too small box and then glance up at her with an expression that said, "I meant to do that." The moments when she'd come home from work exhausted, only to find him waiting by the door with a box in his mouth ready to play. Each day the walls of her heart softened a little more. The house that once felt like a tomb began to feel alive again, filled with purrs, laughter, and the rustle of cardboard. One evening, Mugi sat by the window with Maru asleep on her lap. Outside, the city glowed like a field of stars. She whispered, "You saved me, Maru," and stroked his fur. The cat stirred slightly, then pressed his head against her hand as if to say, "No, you saved me." Months passed, and Maru's fame grew beyond imagination. News channels, newspapers, even international magazines featured the box cat of Japan. People from all over the world sent letters and gifts, tiny boxes, toys, even handmade blankets. But Mugi kept Maru grounded. For her, he was not an internet icon. He was her family. However, fame came with a shadow. One day, while checking her mail, Mugi found a letter with no return address. Inside, a single sentence. "Animals don't belong online. Take him down." Her hands trembled. Fear crept in where joy once lived. That night, she locked all the doors and kept Maru close. The cat sensed her tension and stayed near her feet, his tail flicking nervously. A few days later, she noticed a stranger standing near her building, watching. She hurried inside, clutching Maru tight. That night, when the rain returned, Mugi sat awake listening to every sound outside. But when she looked down and saw Maru chasing a shadow on the wall, pouncing and rolling in his usual clumsy grace, she laughed softly. "You're not afraid of anything, are you?" she whispered. And in that laughter, the fear loosened its grip. Mugi decided to keep uploading his videos, not for fame, but for love. For the millions of people who smiled at Maru's joy. For herself, who had finally found something worth protecting. For the little cat who taught her that happiness doesn't come from perfection, but from playfulness, courage, and the ability to find comfort even in the smallest of boxes. Fame grew like sunlight creeping through old blinds, slow, gentle, but unstoppable. Every morning, Mugi would wake to new messages, new subscribers, and new stories from people around the world who said Maru's joy had healed their hearts. A soldier wrote that watching the cat jump into boxes helped him forget the nightmares of war. A nurse said she played Maru's videos to calm anxious children. A lonely teenager from France confessed that Maru had made her smile again after months of depression. Mugi read every letter, tears filling her eyes, realizing that the laughter she once thought belonged only to her and Maru was now a gift shared with the world. Yet despite the growing noise of fame, their small apartment remained the same, simple, cozy, filled with cardboard boxes of every shape and size. Maru was happiest when surrounded by chaos. He'd dive into boxes stacked 3 high, slide across polished floors, and emerge proudly from his latest conquest with whiskers bent and fur full of static. Mugi filmed every bit of it, her laughter the soundtrack behind every video. But as months passed, the fame brought new responsibilities. Companies wanted to feature Maru in commercials. A television station requested a live appearance. Fans wanted merchandise, plush toys, calendars. Mugi hesitated. She wasn't sure if this world of contracts and cameras was safe for her gentle friend. One cold afternoon, she received a call from a popular Tokyo TV show offering to film at her apartment. "It will only take 1 day," they promised. "We just want to show Maru in his natural home." After a long silence, Mugi agreed, hoping it might spread a little more joy. When the film crew arrived, Maru watched them curiously from atop a large moving box, his tail flicking lazily. Lights were set, cameras positioned, and strangers filled the once quiet apartment with noise. Mugi felt uneasy, but when she saw Maru leap gracefully into a box right on cue, the crew burst into laughter and applause. For a moment, she forgot her worry and smiled proudly. The episode aired the following week. It went viral within hours. Maru's calm face and clumsy dives became the talk of Japan. Newspapers called him the Zen master of boxes, but with fame came imitation. Other people began posting their own pets in boxes, chasing the same magic. Some were sweet tributes, others shameless copies. Mugi tried to ignore it, reminding herself that imitation was the highest form of flattery. Yet one day she stumbled upon a cruel video, someone forcing a terrified kitten into boxes, laughing as it struggled to escape. Her heart shattered. This wasn't joy. It was cruelty disguised as entertainment. That night she couldn't sleep. Maru lay beside her, purring softly, unaware of the darkness his light had accidentally inspired. She stared at him and whispered, "How do I protect your innocence in a world that doesn't understand it?" The next morning she made a decision. She would continue sharing Maru's videos, but with a message. Every upload would end with words appearing on the screen. Respect every life. Let animals choose their joy. Slowly, her followers began echoing the message, spreading kindness across the web. Maru's fame evolved into something pure, a symbol of happiness without harm. Still, life had its quiet storms. Mugi's health began to waver. Long days at work, late nights editing videos, endless messages to reply to, it all took its toll. One night, she collapsed while preparing Maru's dinner. When she opened her eyes, she was in a hospital bed. A nurse smiled gently and said, "You need rest, Miss Mugi." Panic gripped her. "My cat, Maru." The nurse chuckled softly. "He's fine. Your neighbor is watching him." But Mugi couldn't calm down. In her mind, she saw Maru wandering the empty apartment, waiting by the door, wondering why she hadn't come home. For 3 days, she stayed in the hospital. When she finally returned, Maru was sitting by the door just as she imagined, a box beside him, his eyes full of both confusion and relief. He meowed once softly, as if scolding her for being late. Mugi fell to her knees, hugging him tight, whispering apologies between sobs. That night, as Maru purred against her chest, she realized how fragile both their worlds had become. She promised herself to slow down, to care not just for Maru, but for herself too. Together they found a new rhythm, slower, gentler, filled with long naps and quiet evenings. Mugi even began painting again, something she hadn't done since before her husband's death. Maru would sit beside her, pawing gently at the brushes, sometimes dipping his tail in the paint. Her small apartment became a living canvas, walls covered in warm colors, laughter returning like sunlight after a long storm. One of her paintings, titled The Cat Who Found Joy, was exhibited at a small local gallery. The piece showed Maru sitting inside a box surrounded by hearts and stars. A young boy who had lost his pet stood in front of it for a long time, then turned to Mugi and said, "He looks like he knows the secret to being happy." Mugi smiled through tears. "Maybe he does," she said softly. As time passed, the bond between Maru and Mugi deepened beyond words. He followed her everywhere, into the kitchen, the garden, even the bathroom door where he'd sit patiently waiting. At night, he'd curl up against her, his steady breathing like a lullaby. And though fame continued to swirl around them, their world remained simple. Mugi no longer chased views or sponsorships. All she wanted was time. Time to love, time to laugh, time to live with the small creature who had turned her grief into grace. Outside, the world grew louder, faster, more chaotic, but inside that small Tokyo apartment, peace had found its home. As years passed, the rhythm of Mugi's life and Maru's quiet charm became something sacred, a melody that played softly in the heart of their little apartment. Outside, seasons changed. The cherry blossoms bloomed and fell. The summer heat shimmered through Tokyo's streets, and winter's chill returned like a familiar visitor. But inside, the air was warm with routine, laughter, and the sound of soft paws brushing against the wooden floor. Mugi often joked that Maru was more than just a cat. He was her shadow, her guardian spirit, the heartbeat of her home. Yet time, as gentle as it seemed, was always moving. Maru was getting older. His jumps grew slower, his naps longer, and his playful leaps into boxes began to end with soft grunts instead of graceful landings. Mugi noticed it first one autumn morning when Maru missed his favorite jump onto the table. He landed awkwardly, then looked at her with those same innocent eyes that had once melted the world's heart, as if to say, "I meant to do that." She smiled through the ache in her chest. That day, Mugi bought softer cushions, lowered the boxes, and spent the evening sitting beside him, whispering, "It's okay to slow down, my little star." But the internet never slowed down. Fans noticed the change. Comments appeared beneath her videos. "Is Maru okay? He looks older now. Please tell us he's healthy." Mugi responded with gentle reassurance. Yes, he was fine, just aging gracefully. Yet deep inside, she feared the truth. Age was inevitable, and love, she knew, often came with the quiet pain of watching time take what it once gave. One evening, as rain tapped the window, Mugi took out an old box, the first one Maru ever played in. It was worn and bent at the corners, still bearing his tiny claw marks. She placed it in front of him, and for a moment the old spark returned. Maru sniffed the box, then stepped inside, curling perfectly within its walls. Mugi laughed softly, tears catching in her throat. "You still fit," she whispered. That moment became her favorite video ever. She titled it, "You Still Fit, Maru." It spread across the internet like wildfire. People from around the world flooded the comments with memories. How they'd grown up watching him. How his joy had been their comfort during their darkest times. One comment read, "He's not just a cat. He's family to all of us." Mugi sat reading for hours, crying quietly, realizing that Maru's life had become a bridge connecting countless hearts. The next morning, she opened her door to find dozens of small packages left by neighbors and fans, tiny boxes, hand-painted with messages of love. For Maru, our little hero, the cat who made us smile. She stacked them around the apartment, forming a wall of gratitude that shimmered with light and color. Maru wandered among them curiously, sniffing, pawing, then curling up in one as if claiming it as his throne. It was as if he understood the love surrounding him. But time continued its quiet march. Maru's health began to waver. Slower movements, less appetite, occasional coughing. Mugi took him to the vet, her heart pounding like thunder in her chest. The doctor smiled kindly and said, "He's old but strong. He just needs rest and warmth." Mugi nodded, tears threatening to fall. On the way home, Maru rested in her lap, purring weakly, his once bright eyes filled with trust. That night she sat beside him, whispering stories of their years together, the first video, the first box, the laughter that spread across the world. "You've given so much happiness," she said softly. "You deserve all the peace in the world." Maru looked up, his slow blink saying everything she needed to hear: love, gratitude, and the unspoken promise that he'd always be with her. Days turned into weeks, and though he played less, Maru never stopped being himself. Even when tired, he'd drag a small box closer, press his head inside it, and close his eyes as if the world outside didn't matter. Mugi began painting again, this time a portrait of Maru surrounded by boxes that floated like dreams. The painting was titled "The Kingdom of Boxes." She donated prints to an animal shelter, using the money to support older cats. It was her way of honoring him, of turning his joy into something lasting. One snowy evening, as Mugi sat sketching by the window, she felt a soft nudge at her leg. Maru, slower now, had brought a small paper box from the kitchen. It was his final gift. He meowed once, curled inside, and purred louder than he had in months. Mugi leaned down, pressing her forehead against his, and whispered, "You still fit, my love." Outside, snow fell silently, covering Tokyo in white, a world made new again. Inside that tiny apartment, time seemed to stop, suspended in the quiet rhythm of a heart and its echo, a woman and her cat, two souls who had healed each other in ways the world could never fully understand. Maru sat on the rooftop as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The streets below whispered with the evening breeze, carrying scents of fish and fresh bread from the market. Maru's green eyes glimmered, reflecting memories of playful mornings with children, soft pats from kindly neighbors, and quiet moments of solitude on this very rooftop. He remembered the tiny kitten he once was, trembling under the old wooden stairwell, unsure of the world and wary of every shadow. Now he was sleek and confident, yet his heart held the echoes of that fragile past. The night brought a chorus of crickets, and Maru's ears twitched at every sound, a distant bark, the flutter of wings, the gentle patter of rain starting to fall. He leapt down gracefully onto the narrow alley, landing silently, as though the earth itself welcomed his presence. A small mouse darted past, and for a fleeting second, instinct stirred in him. But he paused, watching it scurry safely into its hole. He had learned that gentleness could hold more power than claws. Maru wandered through familiar streets, greeting old friends with a flick of his tail or a gentle nudge. Children ran to him, their laughter ringing like bells, and he purred in response, weaving through their legs, letting them feel the warmth of his soft fur. One elderly woman knelt down and whispered, "My little Maru, you've brought joy to this entire street." And for a moment, Maru felt the invisible threads connecting him to everyone whose lives he had touched. Rain began to fall harder, but Maru didn't mind. Each droplet kissed his fur, mingling with the scent of wet earth, reminding him of countless days spent exploring, discovering, and surviving. Memories of hunger, of the cold nights alone, surfaced briefly, but they were overshadowed by the love he now felt and gave. He darted into a small courtyard, shaking off the water, his tail a proud banner in the dim light. A stray dog approached cautiously, but Maru's calm gaze reassured him. They shared a silent understanding, companions in the quiet trials of city life. Hours passed and the moon rose, casting a silver glow on rooftops and walls. Maru climbed to his favorite perch, a ledge overlooking the bustling market square. From here, he saw the world as a tapestry of stories, merchants arranging wares, lovers sharing quiet whispers, children chasing kites. He felt a surge of pride, knowing he had wandered through all these stories, leaving gentle paw prints on each one. Then came a soft voice calling his name. A small girl with pigtails and a red scarf knelt on the cobblestones. "Maru, come here," she called. Maru padded toward her, nuzzling her hand. She giggled, her eyes sparkling with innocence and joy. She had been afraid of cats before, but something about Maru's serene presence melted her worries. He stayed with her a while, letting her stroke him, feeling her heartbeat against his fur. In moments like this, Maru understood the simplest truth. Love was the most powerful adventure of all. As dawn approached, the city began to stir, and Maru knew it was time to return to his rooftop. The girl waved goodbye, and Maru felt a twinge of melancholy, but also hope, for he knew she would remember him. He climbed back up, curling into a tight ball as the first rays of sunlight brushed his fur. He closed his eyes, listening to the city awaken, hearts beating in rhythm with his own. Memories of every small kindness, every soft pat, every warm meal, and every comforting lap swirled around him. Life had not always been easy, but Maru had found joy in the smallest places, in laughter, in friendship, in the gentle touch of hands that cared. He purred softly, a lullaby to the night, a song of gratitude and love. And in that quiet moment, atop the rooftop, Maru knew he had truly belonged, not to just one place, but to every heart he had touched. Morning broke over the city, and Maru stretched lazily on his rooftop, the warmth of the sun seeping into his fur. The streets below were alive with activity, vendors shouting, wheels clattering, footsteps echoing, but Maru watched quietly, a calm observer of the human world. Memories of his early days flickered through his mind, the fear of empty alleys, the loneliness of abandoned corners, the hunger gnawing at his tiny belly. Yet those dark times had sculpted him into the cat he was today, wise, graceful, and endlessly compassionate. A soft meow drew his attention. A tiny, shivering kitten had appeared on the edge of the roof, its eyes wide and uncertain. Maru's heart ached with recognition. He had once been that fragile creature, trembling under the shadows. Without hesitation, he approached, brushing his tail gently against the kitten's fur, offering warmth and reassurance. The kitten purred, curling into him, finding safety in Maru's presence. Maru led the little one down the familiar alleys, showing it the safest paths, the quiet corners where the sun kissed the stones, and the hidden nooks where food could be found. Each step was a lesson, each pause a reassurance. The world could be gentle if one knew where to look. Children spotted them and squealed in delight, reaching down to touch the pair. Maru allowed the kitten to explore the crowd while he kept a watchful eye, teaching patience, courage, and trust. Hours passed, filled with small adventures, chasing leaves, balancing on narrow fences, and hiding from sudden rains. Yet every moment was colored with love, a legacy of all the care he had received in his life. Evening came, painting the sky with strokes of pink and violet. Maru and the kitten returned to the rooftop, tired but content. They sat side by side, tails entwined, eyes reflecting the city lights like tiny mirrors of gold. Maru thought of every friend he had made, the kind old woman, the laughing children, the gentle dog, the girl with the red scarf, and felt gratitude swell within him. Life was fleeting, fragile, yet endlessly beautiful. He nuzzled the kitten, who purred softly, finally feeling the comfort of belonging. And as the stars blinked awake, Maru whispered in his heart a silent promise: to guide, to protect, and to love those who crossed his path just as he had been loved. The night wrapped them in its quiet embrace, carrying the story of Maru, a story of survival, kindness, and unwavering heart, into every corner of the city. And somewhere, in the hum of life below, humans and animals alike felt the invisible warmth he had left behind, a reminder that even the smallest creatures could touch the largest hearts. Maru closed his eyes, letting sleep claim him, the tiny kitten curled against him, safe, cherished and loved. And in that serene silence, the city, the rooftops, and the hearts of all who had known him carried the soft echo of a life fully lived, a journey of hope, courage, and love that would never be forgotten.